Who's ready for another Friday the 13th review? This one's going to be interesting, but not in a good way. Hey, my little buddy came to visit. What are you doing? You want to get in on this too? Nobody. Can't do it. Friday the 13th Part 5 stars John Shepherd and is directed by Danny Steinman. Guys, before I get started, make sure you check out my Friday the 13th franchise playlist. I'll post a link to that and you'll probably see a card up here somewhere. That way you can watch all my reviews I've done so far and future reviews. Oh, and by the way guys, this review will be spoiler filled. You've been warned. So Friday the 13th, the final chapter comes out and it was a huge hit for Paramount. They had planned on it being the last one, but the franchise had made them so much money that they thought, how can we stop? This would be financial suicide for us. But they wanted to keep their promise and not make the next movie a quote-unquote Jason movie. So instead they decided, hey, let's make this a whodunit, much like the first movie. And let's make the killer be a Jason copycat killer. So to our eyes, it'll still be kind of a Jason movie. And what's interesting is the director, John Steinman, actually had a history in porn. And when you watch this movie, it probably is the most softcore pornish of the franchise. As a matter of fact, it's been called the softcore porn Friday the 13th. So Friday the 13th Part 5 takes place in a mental ward, I guess you could say, or it's kind of a mental farm because they're in an outdoor environment. The locales of this movie are kind of distanced from an actual camp environment. But there is a lot of forestry and greenery throughout, so it can still technically be called a camp environment. But the characters in this movie, they're kooky, they're crazy, they're mental patients. And that is one of the big problems of the movie. But one of the mental patients gets an axe in the back, and that's what sets the killings in motion. The killer avenges the death of the mental patient. Now, this movie is really a mess, guys. It really is, and it's probably the most forgettable Friday the 13th movie. It's one that I've actually watched Part 5, I could say at least maybe 4 or 5 times, and it's just one of those that as soon as I watch it, it leaves my brain. There's something about it that's just not memorable to me, and that is the characters. But I like to start my reviews off with something positive, so I will say this one does have some good things going on for it. First of all, I did like that they tried something different. I like that they tried to make it a whodunit, kind of like the first movie. This was something to kind of keep you on your toes throughout the movie, and you're always trying to figure out who the killer is, because it could be one of the patients, it could be anybody. Also, Friday the 13th Part 5 has more kills than any other entry in the franchise. I believe there are almost 24 kills in this movie, which is crazy. And there are some pretty decent ones, but I would say the best ones are the one where the couple goes into the woods and has sex, and that's for obvious reasons, of course. Debbie Sue Voorhees. Yeah, you heard that right. Her last name is Voorhees, which is one of the reasons why she got the part. And there's 2 other reasons too. And the story of how she got the part is interesting too, because originally Darcy DeMoss was up for the part, who was one of the victims in Part 6. And the reason she didn't get the part was because she had a no nudity clause in her contract. And then they found Debbie Sue Voorhees, and the reason she got the part was A, she was very attractive, B, she had huge assets, and C, her last name was Voorhees. But getting back to those kills, her kill was actually pretty interesting because the killer takes a hedge trimmer and basically trims her right across the eyes. And then also the boyfriend, he gets strapped to a tree and a belt gets wrapped around his head, around the back of the tree, and then twisted. So his skull is crushed by the tightening of the belt. Now we're gonna get to the problems, and this movie has quite a few of them. First of all, the characters. The characters are the biggest problem with Part 5 because they are just so forgettable. Unlike Part 4. Part 4, all the characters were interesting. You cared about them. In Part 5, they were mental patients and they were just crazy. All of them were crazy. I think it's fine if you have one kind of crazy character like Crispin Glover, and if that actor plays that character well. But these weren't great actors, and the characters were really annoying. And 2 of the characters that really annoyed me were the hillbilly character. Maybe I'm just not a big fan of hillbillies in movies, but these characters were really just over the top. And I'm talking about the mom and the son, and the son's on the motorcycle and he gets decapitated. Also, the ending of this movie I thought was really unsatisfying. And it's unsatisfying for a couple of reasons. The fact that it was the ambulance driver that was the killer It seemed very cliche, and it seemed like it was something out of a made-for-TV movie. There was just really no punch to that ending. And then number two, he's not Jason. When you're in a Friday the 13th movie and you're gonna be a killer and it's not Jason, you have some huge shoes to fill. Because Jason really is the ultimate killer. He is an icon. So any other killer is really just gonna be second fiddle to him. And I almost wonder if this movie was kind of just something that they used as a stepping stone because they knew eventually they were going to have to bring Jason back. Also, I didn't really care for John Shepherd, who played Tommy Jarvis. I really liked Corey Feldman as Tommy Jarvis, and I really liked Tom Matthews. But John Shepherd, he just seemed really uninteresting. He didn't really have any moments that stood out to me. And I thought the very end of the movie with him possibly becoming Jason in the next movie, I don't think they were ever going to go that route. I really think they were wanting to bring Jason back. So I thought that whole scene was just kind of pointless. And finally, Melanie Kinnaman might be the least interesting final girl out of all the Friday movies. I even did some research and looked at some polls to see who is the favorite final girl. And of course, it's Amy Steele from part 2. And Melanie Kinnaman was way down the list. She wasn't last, but she was damn near close. And I think some of the troubles that she had behind the scenes might have fed into that. I know that when she arrived on set, she was kind of a prima donna and she wanted everything handed to her. And this was low budget filmmaking and they weren't about to have that. So there were troubles from day one. And I think maybe some of that bled through into her performance. She just didn't seem like she was having fun at all on the set of this movie. So having said that, I do throw in part 5 from time to time, especially if I'm in the mood for something different in the franchise. I do get interested in watching it from time to time, so I'm gonna give it a low humdrum. Definitely nowhere near as good as the previous movies, but it's not the worst movie in the franchise. We'll get to that. So guys, that is my Friday part 5 review. What did you guys think of this movie? Looking forward to hearing your thoughts. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching. Subscribe to my channel, follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and Humdrum out.